The masked corpse, the French Quarter, awoke to the pulse of Mardi Gras, a fevered rhythm of jazz horns and laughter that spilled from Bourbon Street speakeasies into the dawn. Gaslights flickered on cobblestone corners, casting long shadows over revelers stumbling home in tattered costumes, their masks askew. The air was thick with the scent of magnolias, spilled absinthe, and the Mississippi's muddy breath. In Jackson Square, where the St. Louis Cathedral loomed like a silent judge, the party's din faded to a murmur, broken only by the clatter of a milk cart and the squawk of gulls. Detective Julien Dubois stood at the square's edge, his fedora tilted against the morning chill. His dark eyes scanned the scene, Creole features taut with the weariness of a man who'd seen too many sunrises on too little sleep. At 35, Julien carried the weight of a decade on the New Orleans Police Department, each case carving lines deeper into his face. His coat, a shade too thin for February, flapped as a breeze stirred the palms. He lit a cigarette, the match's flare briefly illuminating the scar that curved along his jaw, a memento from a knife fight in a Storyville alley.
"Dubois!" barked Officer Malone, a ruddy Irishman waving from the square center. "Over here, and step lively! This one's a mess!" Julien flicked the match away and strode past the statue of Andrew Jackson, its base littered with beads and crumpled paper masks. A small crowd had gathered near the cathedral steps, their whispers buzzing like flies. Two patrolmen held them back, their billy clubs tapping nervously. Mardi Gras brought out the city's soul, wild, reckless, and teetering on the edge of chaos. But this was different. Julien felt it in the air, a prickle of unease that wasn't just the damp cold. Malone stood over a body sprawled on the flagstones, half hidden by a cluster of oleander bushes. The man was face up, his fine wool suit stained dark at the chest, a crimson pool spreading beneath him. Henri Levine, Julien recognized instantly. The banker's jowly face was a fixture in the Times-Picayune Society pages, his name synonymous with old Creole money and newer, shadier fortunes. But it wasn't the blood or the glassy stare that stopped Julien cold. It was the mask. A grotesque papier-mâché creation covered Levine's face, molded into a leering caricature of a human visage. Its exaggerated features, bulging eyes, a twisted grin, seemed to mock the corpse's stillness. Painted in garish reds and golds, it clashed with the muted dawn. At its center, etched into the forehead, was a crescent moon, its edges sharp as a blade's curve. The mask was affixed tightly, almost lovingly, with thin leather straps knotted at the back of Levine's head. "Mother of God," Julien muttered, crouching beside the body. The cigarette dangled from his lips, ash falling unheeded. He tilted his head, studying the mask's craftsmanship. It wasn't some cheap Mardi Gras trinket tossed together for a parade. The paint was meticulous, the moon symbol deliberate. This was a message. "Found him just before sunrise," Malone said, mopping his brow with a handkerchief despite the chill. "Street sweeper nearly tripped over him. No witnesses far as we can tell. Too many drunks staggering about to notice much." Julien's gloved fingers traced the mask's edge, careful not to disturb the straps. The stab wound in Levine's chest was precise, a single thrust between the ribs. No signs of a struggle, no torn clothing, no defensive cuts on the hands. The killer had been swift, professional. Julien's gaze flicked to the crowd, now swelling as news spread. Masked revelers in feathered capes jostled with dockworkers and maids, their murmurs growing louder. Somewhere, a trumpet wailed a mournful note, swallowed by the clatter of a passing float.
"Get these people back," Julien said, standing, "and find me a photographer before the light changes. I want every angle of this." Malone nodded, barking orders to the patrolman. Julien's eyes lingered on the crescent moon symbol. It stirred something in his memory, a half-forgotten story from his childhood in the treme whispers of voodoo rituals, of power bought with blood. He shook it off. Superstition was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with Chief Inspector Grayson breathing down his neck to keep the city's elite happy during Mardi Gras. He turned to the cathedral, its spires piercing the gray sky. Levine had been a parishioner, a man who flaunted his piety as readily as his wealth. Why here, in the shadow of God's house? Why the mask? Julien's jaw tightened, the scar itching, as it always did when a case felt wrong. A flash of movement caught his eye, a woman slipping through the crowd, her auburn hair catching the first rays of sunlight. She wore a tailored coat and a cloche hat, too sharp for a reveler, too bold for a bystander. A notebook peeked from her pocket, and her green eyes locked onto the crime scene with a hunger Julian recognized. A journalist sniffing blood. She ducked under a patrolman's arm, moving closer than she had any right to. "Hey!" Malone shouted, but Julian raised a hand to stop him. "Let her be," he said, his voice low. He didn't know her yet, but he knew her type. Trouble, the kind that could either break a case or break him. She met his gaze, unblinking, and for a moment, the chaos of the square faded. Then she scribbled something in her notebook and vanished into the crowd, leaving Julian with the corpse, the mask, and a growing sense that this was only the beginning. As the cathedral bells tolled 6, a Crues drumline thundered in the distance, heralding another day of Mardi Gras. Julian crushed his cigarette under his heel. Somewhere in the quarter's labyrinth of revelry and shadow, a killer was watching, waiting to strike again. And Julian Dubois, whether he liked it or not, was now on their trail.